Let's talk.
John Brown.
Because if you know me, you know that I love my history. Yeah. And and one of my favorite places in the world is Venice. Okay. If you haven't been, go now before it gets too warm. But also, and one of my favorite historical periods is late Middle Ages, stroke, early Renaissance. And one of my favorite gangs are the Mongols. And I thought, well, and then my producer came across this book of history, which manages to combine Venice, Renaissance, late Middle Ages, and the Mongols. The book is called, so I'm more than excited, the book is called Venice and the Mongols, the Eurasian exchange that transformed the medieval world. It is by Nicola de Cosmo and Lorenzo Pubblici, which I've probably said this wrong, but joining me live on the line from Florence, ladies and gentlemen, it's probably the luckiest man in the world. It is Lorenzo. Lorenzo, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, I got your name wrong. How do I pronounce? Because my Italian is terrible, you know. So it's Pubblici, no?
It's Pubblici. You pronounced it perfectly, actually.
Well, anyway, and so let me, because you are a professor, because I said, good morning to you, off-air listeners, and I said, are you in Napoli? Are you in Naples? Because you're a professor in Naples. And then you said, no, I'm in Florence and I commute to Naples. So you're a professor at the University of Naples of Napoli. What is your actual job, Lorenzo?
My actual job is I'm a professor of pre-modern Central Asian history at the University of Naples L'Orientale.
Right.
Because, Naples has several universities. One of them, the oldest actually, is the Oriental Institute, which in Italian is the L'Orientale. That's where I teach, and we're all Orientalists, basically. So
now,
yeah.
I'm putting my hat on for this because we have to look, when we talk about Venice and the Mongols, we have to wipe the blackboard clean, wipe the slate clean, because everything that we think we recognize now as Italy and everything that we think we know about the Mongols are entirely differently. Italy is not Italy at this point, is it? It is nation states. It is Lombardy. It is Florence. It is. Are we getting the Medici involved in here somewhere? And why is Venice such a powerhouse of these states?
Well, yes, Italy as a national state is a teenager if you compare it to other European nations or even the United States, because Italy was unified and so was born as a national state only in 1860-61. Yeah. So it's really the day before yesterday, historically speaking. So the centuries we consider in our book, which are basically the 13th to the 15th centuries, are the centuries when in Italy the so-called cities, communes, are moving towards a different territorial and political asset, which we call stati regionali, regional states. So it's more or less a prominent city that could be Florence, Venice, Milan, Naples itself, that developed, grew, and became big enough to extend their hegemony over a big territory, but none of them was big and powerful enough to predominate on the others. That's why Italy remained so divided and exposed to foreign invasions.
So this time period, what time are we talking? Are we talking 1400 and something, 1300 and something? What are we talking here, Lorenzo?
We start in the early 13th century, so 1200s, and we go all the way down to the collapse of the Mongol system. So let's say more or less the 1470s, which is when the Ottomans took over in the whole area of the Black Sea, which is the very geographical focus of our book.
Don't get me started on Constantinople. We won't finish this interview till Tuesday. So Venice at this time is a powerhouse. It's not just the city, it's the lands outside it, but geographically, Venice is perfectly positioned to take advantage of all the areas, the Adriatic, what is now Croatia. It is, and of course, we know, because people think of Venice now as very pretty, you do the Bridge of Sighs and the palace and whatever. But Venice is merchant, but also Venice is maritime. It has got the navy. And this is really important, because you could argue that no other, maybe sort of, the Sardos, but they've got naval forces, but otherwise Venice is the major maritime power.
Absolutely, and it's a maritime power that comes from far back in the past, because Venice, we can say since the 10th century at least, became the naval power on which the Byzantine Empire leaned. And this is very important because the Adriatic Sea and the South Mediterranean Sea were a big area of piracy. So for the Byzantine Empire, it was far away. The Byzantine Empire controlled parts of Italy in the 10th century, but needed a cop to guard, to police those seas. Venice became that. And throughout the centuries built up not only this amazing naval power, the military, the navy of Venice in the 13th century was absolutely stunning, very powerful, and the Byzantine Empire, meanwhile, was declining, and so Venice took over, always in rivalry with another naval power, which was on the Italian territory, Genoa.
Yeah.
So in the book, we talk a lot. We have studied, investigated a lot the rivalry between Venice and Genoa because, and that's where the Mongols get in, because one should answer, as you should ask, as you said, what do they have to do? I mean, the Mongols, Venice.
They're on horse. I mean, the Mongols, we think of, guys,
exactly.
chewing lamb and, drinking their own pee and
drinking cheese.
Exactly.
Yes,
and with bows and and so they won't get to Venice and go, it's wet. We're not going over there, for goodness sake. We like flat grass where we can get a good, get speed with our horses. So and also the Mongols, I mean, we don't think of the Mongols as I know that we have Pax Mongolia, okay? But that is on their terms, i.e., if I'm a Mongol, right? If I am running, for example, imagine a universe, Lorenzo, and this is a very scary universe where I am the head. Don't laugh like that. You don't know me. The head of it. He knows me by now. I'm the head of I've got this. I'm somewhere in modern Hungary, okay? And I've got a nice little town there. I've got my fortifications. I've got my wife, my daughters, and suddenly the Mongols rock up outside. Spitting and smelling, and I can hear the of horses. I've got two options here. I can either go, right, here you go, have the ugliest daughter or whatever. I will pay you tribute every year. Now you can go and bother my neighbor. And the Mongols go, yeah, fine, you're one of us, Pax Mongolia. My neighbor who goes, no, I am a proud Hungarian, I will stand and fight. They find out very quickly, when they've all been slaughtered in 80,000 different and very painful ways, that you don't muck with the Mongols. So that is Pax Mongolia. So Mongols are doing very well, but they want to take over the world. But when they get to Venice, they must think, well, it's wet, it's cold. We've got here at the wrong time. There's fog everywhere because it's the islands. I've been to Venice. I know I've got lost in the fog in Venice outside. Why are they bothering with Venice? And what does Venice make? I mean, the first contacts could have been very short and brutal and bloody on both sides. So what's in it for both sides, Lorenzo?
Well, the Mongols did never arrive in Venice, actually, physically. They, during the campaign to Europe, they passed through the Croatian coast. Today would be Croatia, so Spalato, Split. But then they got back. The very point is that Venice and the Mongols met in what a great historian of the past, a Romanian historian, Gheorghe Bratianu, called la plaque tournante of the Eurasian world, the Black Sea, the Caucasus. So all the line that goes through the mountain range of the Caucasus, so nowadays would be part of Ukraine, Russia, down all the way to Georgia and Armenia. that was the very meeting point, because the Caspian and the Black Sea became those areas where the Mongols had established their domination. The north, what we call, with an anachronism, the Golden Horde. Yeah. The south, the Ilkhanate of Persia. And on the western side, you have the Italian maritime power, so Genoa and Venice, who wanted to make the most out of this coherent political power for the first time that could guarantee security, and so trade, and so money.
Yeah. Because that is the thing, isn't it? Because this is the great thing about Genoa and Venice, is they're clever, they're cunning. Machiavelli, for goodness sake, this is okay. How can we make some money out of these guys? These guys, how can they dress better? And also, can we stick it to the Genoese? Can we use these guys to if not slaughter the whole of the Genoese, can we do it so that they can't do trade? Because trade is the lifeblood.
Absolutely. Yes. And what we try to argue in our book, with all the documents we have read, is that it is, of course, the preparation, the infrastructures, the money, the investments of Genoa and Venice, because, of course, our focus is Venice, but they counted a lot. But who ran the whole business were the Mongols. So every document, every senatorial issue, every letter, every notarial deed shows that the Mongols were the ones that made this possible.
And this is the thing, because we think... Because, you see, the problem with history, Lorenzo, I'll tell you the problem with history. This is Giles Brown speaking on a Friday morning from Marbella. But the problem with history is that we tend to look at it when we look from the West. And what we don't do, and luckily, I'm Northern European, but I've lived in the Mediterranean for a long time. We should really be looking at history from a Mediterranean standpoint. We start at the wrong end, i.e. we start Northern Europe, France, Gaul, etc. And really, we should start round about Venice or round about Constantinople, because we seem to think that everywhere to the east of there is just chaos, where in fact there is trade, there are systems in place, there are trade routes going all the way through to South Africa, I say to people, the Vikings used to go over to Constantinople, and they're like, I thought the Vikings only went and bothered people on the east coast of England. Like, no, and so and Khan, because it's Genghis this is not his surname, it's not Mr. and Mrs. Khan and their lovely daughter, that is the name, that is the name, and they have because you need a system in place, because you've got a massive empire and it's always on the move, but you need somebody to sort of keep stock of what's going. And so there's the famous passport of the Khan saying, I am ambassador of the Khan, if you don't let me in, I'm going to, he's going to kill you. I mean, so they're not, it's not Game of Thrones, it's not the Khaleesi, is it, at all?
No, absolutely. But that's, we can blame for this the 14th century, the 1500s, because it's when what we call the Great Divergence began to appear. But as you were saying correctly, if you look east of Constantinople in the 11th, 12th, 13th century, you find a civilization which is impressive. You have big cities, metropolis, full of traders. You have markets. You have spices, which were fundamental in a pre-modern world. You have textiles, which are amazing. We have recently found a parato, which is one of those huge robes the popes used to wear, all made in gold, and it is clearly Mongol. We have frescoes in Siena with people dressed like Mongols, Dante's Comedy. You look at the 15th chant of the Inferno, Monster Girion is dressed in Mongol, panni tartarici, Tartar cloths. Yeah. Boccaccio's Decameron, Friar Cipolla's novel.
Yes.
The Friar Cipolla was this chubby friar Franciscan with his robe, which was not even brown anymore, was so dirty and full of stains that looked like Mongol clothes. So there's a whole civilization that was not isolated, but was a bunch of regional economies that the Mongol made pseudo-regional, we can use this word, global.
Yeah, and of course it's spices, it's silk, because silk doesn't come from, okay, Justinian the emperor sort of does the first bit of espionage when he steals silkworms or larvae from the empress, but there's this whole new flooding, and also Marco Polo, best PR job in history.
Yes.
People have been, Marco Polo, great PR, people have been doing this for decades, but he was the first one to go, yes, I was there and I saw it first. So he gets Carnivale in Venice, bows to Marco Polo, but it's like people were doing this for centuries before Marco put it down and went, I was the first.
Absolutely. The thing with Marco Polo is that, as you said, it was a great PR, and he found, when he was jailed after the Battle of Meloria, Venice against Genoa.
Yeah, strange. Yeah. So yeah.
No strange. And he found this intellectual, Rustichello, who, by the way, wrote using the cool language of the time, which was Provençal, because Marco Polo's Milione, the original version, is titled Le Divisement du Monde, so it's Provençal. And the book was so successful that Marco Polo became the best testimonial for the Eurasian exchanges. But Marco Polo was also very, very capable, I would say, very smart to get into the sphere of trust of the Khan, of Kublai.
Yeah.
And so he had very important tasks officially hired by the Khan to go around China and check on productions, salt extraction. So Marco Polo's Milione is first and foremost a trading handbook, a handbook for traders, for merchants. Yeah. But it's the best testimony of how these exchanges were normal. I'd like to say one thing on this, one final thing on this. We shouldn't have the idea that these merchants traveled from Venice to China. That would have been crazy. Marco Polo gave us a wrong idea. He did it. His father did it. His uncle did it. But this was not the rule. What changes with the Mongols is that commodities, goods traveled over these huge distances. People traveled by successive segments. So there was a whole infrastructural system made possible by the Mongols that worked very well. So commodities traveled, but a man to travel that distance, it was a 9 months at least journey. Dangerous, expensive, not worth it at all.
But what the Mongols do as well, listeners, if you think you know your Pony Express from the Wild West, where a horse pulls up to one place, it stops, gets handed over, another horse takes off. That's what the Mongols have done before for centuries before they do it in the American West, because they know that's how they can get communication, because hey, the Wi-Fi signal, in Mongolia is terrible, so therefore they can't use it. Now back to Italy. What's the Doge? Okay, two things. How is the Doge keeping control of the merchants? And B, what's the Pope saying about all this? Because again, we're talking because these people aren't Christians. They're not. The Pope's having enough trouble with the Byzantine empires. Yeah, taking Ravelli, etc. Yeah, exactly. Holy Roman Empire. It wasn't holy, and it wasn't an empire, etc. So how is you see, this is what happens, listeners, when you get two history buffs talking on a Friday. I'm coming to Naples, sorry. Oh, thank you. What does the Pope think of all this? And also, how is the Doge keeping? Because the merchants will go, right, okay, we see an opening, we're going for it, and we will give the Doge, a lot of money when it comes back, and So what does the Pope think first?
The Pope, in the very first months, when news arrived of the Mongol advance, so we're talking about the 1240s, 1230s, 1240s, he got scared. I mean, the Pope was Innocent IV back then, and it's not coincidence, he was a Genoese, Sinibaldo Fieschi, so from a very noble Genoese family. The guy understood immediately what was happening or what could happen. So he took the menace very seriously. In fact, what the Pope did, because we should say also this, as in parenthesis, let's say, that when the first news arrived about the Mongols, a lot of people in Europe connected these unknown people, which was conquering a city after another, nobody could stop them. They associated it with Priester John. Priester John,
the famous.
You probably heard about it. Yeah.
Well, I have.
Was a legendary figure.
Explain to the listeners, because I know this, but the listeners are going, what? So, you have Lorenzo, you talk, I'll be quiet.
No, of course. Because since the 12th century in Europe, the rumors about this legendary, super wealthy, powerful king that lived in the Orient. That was the idea. Nobody knew exactly what the Orient was, in the Indias or more or less over there. And this king was so rich, so powerful, but most of all, Christian, that he would have come and defeat the infidels, the Muslims, because this was the very obsession of the papacy. So when the Mongols first advanced, and rumors, mostly through merchants, arrived in Europe about this advance, a lot of people believed, okay, it's Priester John coming to save us from the infidels. Then the Mongols, as you said, took Hungary, a Christian kingdom. So they started thinking, wait a second, maybe these guys are not that friendly with the Christians. And so what the Pope did, Innocent IV, was to organize missions to the Mongols for two reasons, with two goals. The first, let's go meet these guys. Let's go understand these guys. Who are they? How do they fight? Can we actually confront these people, or it's better leave them alone and see what happens? Second reason, is it possible to convert them to Christianity if they're not Christians yet? And so Innocent IV, during the Council of Lyon in 1245, organized this mission, sending over a Franciscan from Umbria, nearby Perugia, a city that today is Magione, back then was called Pian del Carpine. And the guy's name was, the friar name was John. John Pian del Carpine, Plano Carpini, we translated into English generally. The guy went, took information like, a very pro-intelligence agent, and wrote a book on this, which is the Historia Mongolorum. It's amazing.
Right.
But then there were other missions, like another Flemish Franciscan, William from Rubruck, went over there. They both met the Khan. So, to answer your question, the papacy took this thing of the Mongol advance very seriously. And in the beginning, they also tried to establish contacts in anti-Muslim function.
Yeah.
Then they realized it wasn't doable. Everything was finished and it didn't work out. But they tried to ally to the Mongols against the Muslims.
Now, one of the things that changes, which is really interesting, and I can imagine the Venetians going, whoops, because in the Fourth Crusade, right? Because again, one of my things is, the Byzantine, they go off on, he's got a bunch of Frankish knights. They're going to go off to the Holy Land. But as a side quest, if you're playing your online games, as a side quest, they decide to reinstate a Byzantine empire who assures them that when they get to Constantinople, they will get all their money back for the massive amounts of ships the Venetians have built for them for this crusade. And when they get to Constantinople and they overthrow the emperor and they put the new emperor on, the emperor hasn't got the money because he was lying through his teeth and he's not that well. So he gets blinded, as they always do, because you can't be the emperor if you can't see. It's standard things for the Byzantines. But they can't pay. And so they sit outside for days, and the Venetians go, we want our money back, and bam, the Frankish knights sack Constantinople. Big massacre, horrendous. It's seen as a total crime. Now, so that kind of weakens Constantinople. As the Mongols lose their power, of course, the Ottomans, another great misunderstood and Orientalized, because we're looking at history from the wrong end of the Mediterranean, they come on board. The Venetians must think, oh, blimey, we thought that, we thought we were beating the Byzantines, and now here come the Ottomans, and we're in real trouble now. How does Venice react? Because the world is changing. Nothing happens. The Mongols recede, like the tide goes back, but the Ottomans sweep across. And if you thought the Mongols were organized, blimey, the Ottomans are Champions League. They are the Inter Milan, if you like, of invading forces.
Well, let's see. The Fourth Crusade was a shock. Let's say the schism of 1054 was a very doctrinal thing, but the sack of Constantinople of 1204 was a very rupture between an Eastern and the Western Christianity. Politically speaking, yes, the Latin Empire was established, the Byzantine Empire was divided, fragmented, the whole Anatolian Peninsula lost a coherent political power that could defend that eastern frontier. In my opinion, and that's what we argue in our book, that facilitated the Mongol advance in the 1230s and 40s. But then, as you were saying, the Mongol tide slowly retreated, and that favored the ascent of local powers, among which were already in the 14th century, in the 1300s, the Ottomans, the Osmanli, that's how the clan was called, took over, became more and more powerful, took advantage of the Mongol weakening, the Mamluk weakening, and of course the Byzantine structural weakening, because the Byzantine Empire after the Fourth Crusade was the shadow of the glorious empire that had existed before. So we can say that, yes, all these events are connected. When we think of the Middle Ages as a dark age, as an age of static political patterns, well, we should reconsider that, because no other era in world history has had humans that put their lives at stake to go against power. No other time in history has changed political configurations like the Middle Ages. That's why we should study the Middle Ages, not Eurocentrically, but with an open mind.
Totally. Lorenzo, I could speak to you and this until Pastor John comes over the hill, but we're going to run out of time. The book. Listeners, go onto our website, click on the book Venice and the Mongols. It's by Nicola de Cosmo and Lorenzo, who speaks today. Lorenzo, are you on social media? Where can we find you online?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Substacks.
Fantastic. The book is called Venice and the Mongols. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great pleasure.